but it allows you guys to see it. This I bought probably 6 years ago for a couple $100. It's an Epson. But it's, you know, back in Mr. Frost's day, he had the overhead transparencies.
Yeah, we had that, you know, that clear plastic that you wrote on?
Yeah.
And you wrote on it with a Sharpie.
Yes.
All right, so when I go up on that roof and I power up my unit, the economizer fires up, tells us our version, and we go right to that status menu. Huge service tool now versus this guy mocking you by just staring at you, telling you nothing. So I'm going to hit the enter key. And the first thing it says is status economizer available, yes. I've replaced the outside air sensor on this with a variable resistor, that black board here. So I can change what the outside air temperature is versus, you know, being 70 degrees all the time. So my next menu, am I economizing? Yes. Because I've got a Y1 call there. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be economizing. So there's no. Again, I forgot my meter. I forgot HVAC 101. Do I have economizer? This is key. Occupied status? Yes. I've got an occupied switch here. It can also be every Carrier unit, Bryant, Carrier, ICP, comes with factory wired. If you've got power on G, you're an occupied. So, constant fan during the day, remember we talked about for that ventilation air? Or, if I've got a call for heat or cool. So what could happen at night if I don't change the wiring, which 99% of the people don't do. I get a call for heating in the middle of the night because it's freaking cold outside. I'm bringing in outside air. Unless I've got a switch, time clock, occupied status on a good commercial stat that I wire in, that I tell the unit when it's when it's occupied or unoccupied.
How often do you see that happen?
Very, very rare.
Okay.
Nobody's taking the time. I get
I mean,
it.
you're seeing.
It's better than nothing to wire the stat to the terminal strip with all, you know, our 5, 7 wires, whatever it is, and have the fan on during the day and cycle at night.
How often do you see a furnace kick on or a rooftop and the outside air is coming in? That's pretty common because of this situation.
In the wintertime,
Yeah.
a lot,
Yeah.
because we know we don't have any solar gain, and we don't have any gain from the lights. We don't have our load that's giving us free heat. So in the wintertime, we could be cycling a lot.
Okay.
Here's an energy saver that you can go to that account that you have that you're trying to win over or maintain and say, we're going to shut your dampers off at night, and here's how we're going to do it.
So the selling process for Kyle and Landon is really looking at what they have there, because a lot of the things we do is replacement, right? For you to go in and look at what's there and say, folks, we can save you a lot of money if you use our company, because we're going to set you up for your use and not necessarily just a generalized setup. Am I going down the right path?
You're absolutely on the same page.
Right? So,
Yeah, same book.
so
same
I
page.
think that, you know, although this is good information for all the guys that are twisting the wrenches for the sales group, it's a total different perspective. Right?
Yeah.
So,
But the word commissioning gets thrown around a lot in today's HVAC world. Commissioning this is part of commissioning. Do we have the right sequence? Are we occupied and unoccupied? What are we doing with our dampers? It's gone from very little awareness 10 years ago to we're scratching the surface pretty good and we're getting there.
so if we're pulling it, so essentially if we're pulling in 25 in an unoccupied position, and we're pulling in 25% fresh air all the time into a space that's unoccupied, how much more is that going to cost us to heat that period when there's nobody there?
Right. energy waste.
Right. So therefore, you can save them money
Yep.
by just doing a couple things.
Yeah, that's a good call.
So the next menu down is our Y1 in. I don't have my meter, but I know I've got no power on Y1. Let's give it power on there. I've got power here. Next one's Y1 out is off. Why would I have Y1 in but no Y1 out?
Economizing right now.
Exactly. I'm economizing only. That's key also. So my brain is determined, whether it's the brain in my head or the brain here, that the conditions are good outside, so it's below 55, drywall, economy or enthalpy. I'm taking that 24 volts and using it to economize instead of compressor. And then the same thing with our Y2, in and out. Do I have a heat call? Nope. My mixed air temperature is 69.8 degrees, and that's an actual sensor there. Feels warmer, but that's what it is. And my outside temperature is 33.4, and that's on this guy here, so if I change the resistance, it's getting colder, and then it's getting warmer. So, 10,000 ohm thermistor in there, it's reversed. RTD, whatever that's called. Damper, 86 degrees because I'm trying to economize. Remember, it thinks it's cold outside. And then my actual position. And this gets into that default detection. Anybody do pneumatic controls back in the day? They used to have pilot positioners that would tell you how the dampers were open. But this, in that silk bus, we're actually giving a signal to the damper actuator, and then we know what the actual position is. So where that's going to be handy is, I'm asking for economizer, but my damper signal, it's not reacting. I can troubleshoot the damper here. I can stroke it in one of the other menus. My exhaust is now on. There. Because of my dampers. Quite a bit open. And then my actual counts, that's going to tell you how many full open closed strokes that damper's had, and my actuator checks out okay. That's the end of that menu. Oh, my exhaust status is on. That's the end of it. I'm going to jump to
Better tighten some terminals real quick.
it. Yeah. So, exhaust status was on. The next menu is my set points. This is the next critical menu when you're setting up a unit, obviously. Mixed air temperature point, set point is 53. That's what those dampers are going to modulate to maintain. And remember, a couple degrees of motor heat, fan heat, we're going to get 55 in the space. That's critical because more is not better. So like more cold air, think about when this diffuser was running back in the day. 55 degree air, this is an induction style diffuser, so it supplies air, but it's also mixing return air in and induces return air. And if it's a 10-to-1 diffuser, for every 100 CFM supply air, it's moving 1,000. This isn't 10-to-1, but that's just easy math. Fun facts, if you see dirt along a supply air register, and they say, hey, your unit's messing up our space, you're politely saying, no, your space is dirty, because the return is getting engulfed in that supply and leaving its dirt on the ceiling tile. So no matter how many filter changes you do and how many coils you clean, you're not cleaning up that ceiling tile if it's got those marks. It's coming from the space. The other fun fact is, why is that brown?
Water.
But why does clear water cause that to be brown? They're made of clay and newspapers. So when somebody says, oh, my crapper's leaking, it's any water. Condensate, your fire sprinklers, water lines are going to cause a ceiling tile to turn brown. Any condensate leak up there or sweating will do that. So don't panic when you see a brown ceiling tile that you're dealing with nasty water. But if I put, back in the day you heard the term wild economizer, so there would be a sensor on the outside air that, hey, it's 50 degrees outside, I got a call for cooling, 100% outside air. That's wild. We have no control of the mixed air temperature sensor, and we're dropping whatever temperature is out there. It ain't gonna work, because that 55 degree air with the entrained air is going to come out in the space, and it's going to be comfortable when we need cooling. 40 degree air is going to drop like a lead balloon. It's just going to fall, and it's going to fall right on my bald spot. It's going to irritate me, or females or anybody else. So we never want that to get much below 50 degrees, 53 degrees, unless it's processed. So you got a big piece of machinery there, I want as cold as air I can get on it. That's where we can change that. Low limit lockout. Remember back in the day of our old economizers, we had click-ons, these guys. This is what locked out the refrigeration cycle before we put low ambient controls on it. So this was set at 45 degrees. We had another one of these maybe set at 55 for the economizer, so two of these. We're using that outside air sensor for everything. So make sure you change this back to 45 unless you have low ambient on the controller, on the unit. That's going to lock out refrigeration only. Dry bulb set point is 57 degrees. That's if we're using a dry bulb economizer. Minimum position, 3.45 volts. Takeaway to remember here is this is a 2 to 10 volt actuator, so from 0 to 2 it does nothing. We've got a span of 2 to 10, so roughly 8 volts. If we want 20% movement, that's 1.6 volts, right? So we're going to take that 1.6, add it to 2, 3.6 volts is going to give us about 20% outside air. Or 20% of movement. Dampers aren't linear, so they're not going to, you're not going to see that curve that's a direct one-to-one relationship with movement. Go look at it. Go look at the damper. Look at your specs. Look at the building pressurization. Am I bringing in enough outside air?
What was the setting right before this one that you just...
The dry bulb
bulb set
lockout.
point.
So that's my economizer lockout.
Alright.
If I took this out and wired in an enthalpy sensor, it would immediately ask me what curve I want to be on. But since I've got a dry bulb sensor, it's looking at only temperature. Exhaust set point, remember that's how far the damper is open. So anything I want to change, I'm just going to hit enter. Right now it's at 44%, but say I don't have a lot of ductwork on this job, I'm going to say I need it at 60% open before I kick on my power exhaust. So there's my power exhaust, now is set to come on at 60% open. And that's the end of that menu. The next one is system setup. My install date, my units of measure. We're not Canadians, so we're going Fahrenheit. Nothing against Canadians. Conventional heat cool. Auxiliary 2 is our W call, or our W. This is just so it knows it's in the heating mode. And on a staged air volume, we're always at high speed in a heating call. So that's all that's for. Fan speed, this one's a single speed. The default on this is 2-speed. So if you got a 7.5 ton and below with a single speed fan, change it right here. Otherwise you're going to get 2 different set points. Remember the mix box, the amount of outside air we bring in is based on the negative pressure in that mix box. Remember we saw that picture with the different colors on it? What's going to happen to the negative pressure when we go to low fan speed? It's going to reduce. So we need to open that outside air damper more to get the same CFM. So if we got a Y1 call on a staged air volume unit, we need to have a higher outside air damper position. Same CFM.
Yes, sir.
And that's the end of that menu. Oops. Advanced setup is going to give us our mixed air low limit, 44 degrees. That's at what temperature our mixed air gets that we close the outside air damper. So this is more of a freeze stat. It's not going to shut the unit down, but it's going to shut down all the outside air. So whatever temperature, 44 is pretty safe. I can go a little less if I wanted to, but usually we're seeing 44 degree discharge air. We're either really low on air flow and our DX is overcooling, or we've got a problem with our outside air damper. And the freeze protection position is closed. We can do other things with that. We could close it. We can go to minimum. That's the only two options. This is that stage 3 delay that I talked about. So we have economizer and both stages of cooling. Smoke damper we typically don't deal with, but if there is a smoke purge, we can purge it here. And then we can do offsets on our temperature. So we can calibrate. If we think we've got a sensor that's a degree or two off, we can calibrate those sensors right here. And that's the end of that menu. And then checkout. We can get that we can go through damper positions. We can close it, open it. We can do a Y1 call right through this without a jumper. So it's pretty cool. Real easy to use. Real easy to go through those menus. But until you've done one by yourself, you forget a lot. So use that online one. And then if you guys start seeing a lot of these, build one of these boards. There's about $120 worth of parts here. But challenge yourself.